Hey guys and girls, welcome back to 396 Guitars. We have a Squire by Fender on the bench today. It's an Indonesian guitar. First impressions are it looks pretty good. It is what it is. But my mantra is always every guitar deserves to play as well as it can possibly play. That being said, I have no complaints or comments from the customer, the client that gave it to me. Let's get to work, and we're going to figure out what is going on with this as we go along together, as usual. Really, the only thing he did say was it needs help. It doesn't play good. I don't know what that means, but we're going to find out. Initial impressions are it's not a bad-looking guitar. I would consider it an entry-level Affinity Squire by Fender Strat. It does say made in Indonesia, crafted in Indonesia, designed and branded by Fender. We all know all about that. There are different levels of Fender branding and different levels of guitars. I would call this definitely an entry-level guitar. It would be great for a young person. But where this comes from is the client is the local amplifier guru. Excuse me. In fact, his business is called the Amp Whisperer, and he is, in fact, a guitar amp guru by all accounts. I've never used him to work on any of my amps, but we do have kind of a budding relationship in that I refer all of my amplifier business to him at the place where I subcontract out during the day part-time, and every once in a while I will send him something. I have sent him some customers from here. He has done the same for me, by the way, so it's kind of a give and take. Initial impressions are, yeah, it's got a loose output jack. Everything seems to be in order. Let's take some measurements, but even before we do that, I can tell you by looking at this, just looking at it, the string spacing on the neck is off. The bass side is really, 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 really close to the edge. That is, the route wasn't cut quite properly, or this wasn't cut quite properly and put in, and it only needs to be off by a millimeter or two for it to affect it. We've got a lot of space here on the treble side and very little on the bass side, as you can see. The camera is picking that up. It's pretty obvious. Now, am I going to get into major surgery on this guitar? No, but I do have a trick that I'm going to try. It's probably going to light a lot of people up, but sometimes you can loosen the bolts back here and cock the neck slightly to give it a little bit more string spacing on this side. It's so on the edge that I don't know how it's not popping off playing it. It's not so bad up here, but when you get down here, it's really, really close. About from halfway down, it's just super close and too far in there. It could be repaired a couple of different ways, but none of them are going to be easy. It would be major surgery. Minor surgery by, recutting a nut, but that's not really the right way to do it. String spacing begins and ends with the route where the heel and the body mate and where this is placed. So I didn't manufacture the guitar. I didn't put it together, but I'm going to try to make it better. That's our whole goal here. Fret ends do not feel terrible. I have felt much worse. They're not super smooth, but they are what they are. I found some looseness going on up here. We'll know more when we de-string it. Let's get to it. I want to know where the neck relief is, as always, and string height as it relates to neck relief. What am I doing? Yeah, neck relief. Where are we? It's got too much neck relief in it. The neck has got too much forward bow in it. And sometimes you can actually see it. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. I do have it tuned up to pitch. I noticed some wonkiness when I was tuning it up off camera. The tuners are not the best. They could be loose and moving. Of course, we're going to address that issue when we get there. I'm going to try to maybe jockey this neck over slightly. I don't like doing this, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And if it wants to give, sometimes you get lucky. Loosen it up a little bit and try to. It's not giving me much. Some. It did give me some. In fact, it gave me quite a bit. I can visibly see that I've got a little bit better reveal on the base side. I just wanted to try that trick once and see if we can get it to stay there. And then tighten down a couple of screws and eyeball it. Is it completely kosher? No, but it should help playability. And yeah, most definitely we got, you can see right here, right? Definitely got a little bit better off the outboard edge here. It's going to be a lot less apt to sliding off. Just checking for sharp frets or lifted frets if anything's hanging up. I can tell by looking at it. I gained probably 1.5 millimeters, maybe 2 millimeters. And that's going to be good enough. I'm going to call that a win because it definitely was just too far that way. And everything that we gained here, it took off slightly there, and now they're even. So, yeah, it's just a tweak. It's an old trick. Again, it's not completely kosher, but it works. I want to fix that before I forget. I know it's loose. And it's spun around. Wires are attached. There's nothing wrong there. We just need to tighten it. Boy, if I had a nickel for every time I've had to tighten an output jack. Of course, it's not 13. It's Indonesian. Yeah, knucklehead. I like the tank to be oriented down. What in the hell size is that? I know it's not. It is. Not only is it not 13, it's not 12. I want that to be down straight as much as possible. Perfect. Perfecto. It is the 4th of July weekend. I wish everybody a happy 4th of July, Independence Day. Don't be afraid to raise the American flag. I don't care what your politics are. Be proud. This is still the best country in the world, in my opinion. Burn some meat on the grill. Have a nice cold beer or your beverage of choice. Spend time with your family and friends. That is the order of the day this weekend. Ya follow? All right, let's check electronics and make sure everything is working the way it should before we get too far along. Yeah, everything's working. Thank Buddha for small miracles. Okay, I'm going to pause off camera. I'm going to de-string it, and I'm going to clean the frets. It appears to be set up as a hardtail. I'm going to not assume that he uses the trem. Now, this is really his test guitar that he uses when he's repairing amps. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to test your work when you're working on amps, I assume, but it's nice to just plug an instrument in and go bang, and yeah, everything's working right. Correct? You follow? We're going to de-string it and clean up the frets and oil the board. We're going to go into setup after that. We know it's got too much neck relief, and oh, by the way, the string height, I checked it off camera, almost 8/64, 8, 7. That one's actually close. That one's lower than close. That one's way too low. So yeah, neck relief, string height, that's all part of the setup. And of course, I'm going to check the intonation and make sure that our saddles are nice and level. That's all part of the setup. Let me de-string off camera, and then we're going to go to cleaning and prepping the board, get all that done, and when we come back, we're going to restring it and do the setup. So stand by. So I'm right back. Before I did polish the frets. I was getting ready to go in and oil the board because that's what we do. And there is some sort of boogerness going on here. There's something protruding from the fretboard right there below, halfway between the nut and the first fret. It's hard, and it appears as though there is actually some glue. I'm going to try, it doesn't appear to be metal, but I am going to try to file it down without doing too much damage to what's going on either side of it. Boy, you never know what you're going to run into, but I wanted to illustrate this because, yeah, you run into weird shit like this sometimes. It's sticking right up off of the fretboard, and it's hard, whatever it is, and it looks like there's some glue push out where somebody put something in there at some point to fill a hole, maybe. I don't know, but I'm going to try to file it down and get it smooth. because it's bugging me. It's bugging me. And I wanted to show you guys that sometimes you run into weirdness that you just don't know what it is, but it doesn't belong there, and I'm going to have to address it because we can't just give it back like that. I don't know what it is, but it is odd. It looks metal to eye, but whatever it is, it's really soft and it's knocking down quickly. Yeah, I think I got it. It would not pull off with my fingernail. Whatever it is, it's stuck into the metal or into the wood, and it was glued in there. And now I've taken all of the edge off of it. Yeah, that is really strange. I don't want my fingernail to catch on it. That's what I'm trying to do. And next. Boy, you just never know what you're going to run into. Whatever it was glued into it. I'm going to assume it was done probably when the guitar was manufactured. And they never smoothed it off. There must have been a hole or an anomaly in the wood surface. And they just glued something into it. Yeah, it's glue and it's coming off all around it. That is so weird. Got most of it. Almost all of it. It is acting just like it's super glue. Nice and smooth now. I'm going to try to buff that with... I'm going to try to buff that with an ultra white. Let's go to... I'm going to go to, like, yeah, about... I'm going to go to like 12,000 and just knock it down. I could take it a step further and dollop some wood dust in there, some sawdust, wood dust, so that it doesn't show, but at least I knocked it down and it's completely smooth now. Buff it and most of the striations come out. I'm going to put a little polish on it. Well, I'm eating up a lot of video time. I just wanted to illustrate that you just never know what's going to pop up. Just the tiniest little bit of polish on it should lighten it up. Really don't want to get that into my... I use those on frets. Oh yeah, I cleaned it right up. There's still just the smallest little hint of a piece of glue that was on there. Whatever it is they stuck in the cavity to try to cover it, there's glue there, but then they never filed it down. It's almost invisible. Almost. We're going to call that good enough. I don't know how you could play the guitar, because every time you were trying to hit an F, you'd be hitting that thing and it could catch on the string or whatever. All right, I'm going to pause now while I oil the board and clean up. I just wanted to show you that. Stand by. Okay, so we're back. Yes, we cleaned the board, we cleaned the frets, we oiled the board, we fixed a little problem that was protruding from the board. I cleaned the guitar, wiped it off camera. I tightened up all of the tuners were literally moving. Tuning instability must have been a nightmare on this guitar. Because all the tuners were loose. The nuts were completely, finger loose, like you could move them around. So tightened all that up. During the de-stringing process, you hear that? E, A, D, G, and the B are getting caught in the nut slot. So you can see I have my array of nut files here. We're not going to cut them deep until what I want to do is widen them up, all of them, okay? And then once we start moving to final setup, I'm going to check our height at the first fret to make sure our first fret action is correct. But that's kind of after you do everything else. Then you recheck that stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to show you one. What's happening is the nut slot is too narrow and the string is actually getting caught in the nut slot. Can't have that. That is tuning instability at its finest. As you're strumming, fretting chords, you tune it up. And then you might play a number, and then you go and all of a sudden the low E is out of tune, or the A is not going back into tune. You got to remember the strings move slightly over the nut and they move slightly over the saddle as you're playing, and they need to be moving freely. If they're hanging up in there for any reason, they could stay flat or stay sharp, as you're playing. And yeah. That's tuning instability. So all we're doing is we're trying to round it out on the top. If the V is like this, we're trying to widen it on the top part of the nut slot opening, not the depth, if that makes any sense at all. And the way we do that is we angle the file that way. And then that way. And as we're filing it, we just kind of turn it in. And be ever so careful that you're not cutting it deeper. You don't want to do that at this juncture. We're just trying to open up the top part of it so that the string can move easily in there. And if you don't have a file, sometimes you can just take a string and move it back and forth like that, and then lift it up and down. And it should go up and down without catching or binding in any way. And then make sure that there's no burrs. Right? And that one is done. It was catching before we did that, and now it's not. I am likely going to find high fret action here. On these cheaper instruments, this is a place where they don't pay a whole lot of attention to it when they're building the guitar. It's set. They just they cut it down, and as long as the instrument's playing, they send it. They ship it. In the name of profitability. These tuners are absolutely horrible. I can tell you that. A cheap upgrade for this instrument to make it better would be a new set of tuners. I like that. Just out of curiosity, where are we? That's 23. $20 kind of fits loosely. So that one I would say is okay, right? And it's not catching in the nut slot anymore. Guess what? I have 4 more to do. The only one that wasn't catching was the high E. Please stand by. Okay, so we're back. Cleaned up the nut slots. Believe it or not, they're actually all at a pretty good height after I cleaned up the width of them. They were, most of them, all but the high E, were sticking, and it's odd because usually the wire strings don't stick, but they were. Cleaned them up, widened them, did not make them any deeper because, believe it or not, I measured them, and yeah, they're all pretty good. D is a little bit lower. I would say that the B is a little high, and the G is a little bit high, but I usually try to do 20 to 22 or so on the bass side, and somewhere around 12 on the treble side, but they're acceptable, you know. I don't like to go too low on those because, especially on these cheaper entry-level instruments, if you go too low, you're going to have buzzing up there, and we don't have that right now, and I'm not going to press fate. I tightened up all the tuners. They were all really loose, and even the bushing tightness was a little loose, so we snugged those up. Tightened up the output jack. I even went as far as one at a time after we, loosened these and straightened the neck a little bit. I opened these up and pulled all the plastic that was still sitting down in there. It was driving me nuts. I can't leave it like that. So that brings us up to speed. It is time to move on to setup, and I know that there's too much neck relief in this for what I would like, meaning that there's too much forward bow. And we know this because I measured it a couple of times and it's not changing, so we definitely need to address it. It's really, really close, but I'm gonna snug it up slightly. I want to bring it up just slightly, a little bit straighter. It's a 4 mil to the right, about 1/8 of a turn, or just to snug it a little bit. Should get me where I want to live. I really don't like these tuners. Some are really loose and some are extremely tight and not responsive. I don't like that. But we're going to live with it because that's what we have to work with. Yep. That's where we're going to live. That's all it needed. And if you're close, yeah, it's close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades, but I like it to be where I like it to be. Now, string height. That's the next order of business. And it was really, really high. Now, it's probably gone down slightly, but I know we're going to have to adjust the saddle height. It did come down a little bit because when you straighten the neck, you're bringing the surface up closer to the strings. We still need to go a little lower. Where am I here? Pretty certain. Forgot to my tool before I turn the camera back on. Pretty certain it's this guy. No. Sometimes with these Indonesian guitars, you'll find some metric and some standard stuff. And yeah, sure enough. All right, so you want to eyeball and make sure that your saddles are level. Now, they're going to be different heights, sure enough, but you want them, you don't want one side of the saddle tilting up or down. So we need to lower the E 100% for sure. Wow, already we have a problem. Why are you not fitting in there? All right, stand by. I gotta investigate this. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that. Yeah, a couple of these have been boogered up using the wrong size Allen on them. So we're lowering. We lowered the E, the low E. We're lowering the A's. Geez, way high. So basically, we're lowering them all to start and getting them started at a level point and guesstimating where they need to be as far as final height. So that's the first step, especially when they're this far out of whack. I know my fat head is probably in the way. The only one that was too low was the high E. I'm just going to give a little bit turn up. Retune. Every time you move those up or down, make sure you're tuned to pitch. And then we're going to go to, fine tuning them. They're all way out of whack. So now it's fine-tune time. Right? And this is tedious sometimes, especially when they're this far out. You adjust a little bit and then check your measurement. I like that, 5/64. The A is still a little bit too tall. And all things being equal, once we get our neck relief set and our string height set, we'll go to our intonation. Now I'm setting it at 5/64 all the way across to follow the radius of the board. To me, that's a standard measurement for a Stratocaster, which basically this is, even though it only says Strat on the headstock. But I'm telling you, that's where it's going to play good from experience. Right? Am I even in the camera? Probably not. This can get really tedious. Like it. And of course, tune it back to pitch and recheck your adjustments. We should be in the sweet spot there. I want them all at the same height all the way across, and they are. just double check that you don't have any errant saddles that are higher on one side and lower on the other. They really want to be as flat as possible. And that could cause a little bit more adjustment. 100%. Those two are a little bit off. And really the only way to see that is to really sight it down this way. So as you're down here really close and making your fine adjustments, you can't tell if they're level. And when I say level, don't pull out of level. They just need to be by sight flat with the deck, you know? That's how I do it. That's the way I recommend you do it. I don't have any heartaches. 5 64s. 5. Yahtzee. Beautiful. We should be getting to the point where we're pretty stable. Stretch them. Retune. Now, we're setting this up as a hardtail. We're not using the trim, and it is pulled down tight. So that's the way it was when I got it, and that's what I'm assuming the client would want. He didn't say he wanted it to be a floater, and I'm almost certain that he doesn't, because for what he's using this instrument for and the way it came in, that's the way we're giving it back. We're going to set it up as a hardtail. Hardtail means I tightened the springs all the way up. They were already there. I just leveled them out, and that pulls the bridge and saddle assembly hard to the deck. Hardtail, right? Yeah, she's getting stable. Now, I'm only going to check the intonation. If I need to make adjustments, I'm going to do it off camera because it does take a hot minute. Unless the guitar makes me a liar, and it's so far so good. Yahtzee. Don't like these tuners. Have I said it before? These tuners are just loose and unresponsive. Alright, I lied. The G is so far is the only one that was sharp. We're going to pull it back, give it some love. Dead on. Beautiful. Okay, out of them all, we only needed to do the G. I'm surprised a little bit, but usually that's the only measurement they ever get right, even on high-end guitars. It's holding pretty good. Where was I going? Pickup height. Not bad. Too far away. Too far away. Let's bring these up slightly. Too far away. Not responding. All right, the bucker is good. These two have to come up on the treble side. That's usually the last adjustment I make, and then I'm going to, off camera, because we're running a little bit long in the tooth here, off camera, I'm going to run down all of the frets, just to check every note, just to make sure before I give it back to him, you know. But right now, I'm pretty confident that it's playing well. That sounds pretty sweet, right? All right, like I said, off camera, I'm just going to do one last little exercise, and the only reason I'm not doing it on camera is because we ran long. But we fixed quite a few little things with this guitar, and not knowing what he wanted, I just went through a blank slate and checked everything and did a complete setup, cleaned, polished the frets, oiled and conditioned the fretboard. I'm happy with that. What else? I think it needs a new set of tuners. For this guitar to play really well, it needs a new set of tuners. But for the most part, she's ready to go back, and now it's going to play right. It's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. Thanks for your views. Thanks for your comments. I appreciate all your support. We'll talk soon.